Welcome. Thank you guys for joining me today to discuss indoor air quality. I'm Rob Ambrosetti with KGG Consulting, and I'm happy to be your instructor today. You're currently in the listen-only mode and have the opportunity to ask questions using the chat box in the control panel. You can ask questions at any time, and I'll be happy to answer them at the end of the session. So thanks again for being here, and let's get started. So this is the second part of the three-part IAQ training series that we developed. Part one, some of you may have attended, which was the indoor air quality basic training. So this is a follow-up to that. So take what you know already with indoor air quality, and let's, taking it a step further, we're going to talk about the technologies that are used to actually clean the air. And then part three is going to be selling IAQ, which will be in a couple of weeks. Just check out kggconsulting.com/events, or if you just want to text IAQ to 31996, you'll get the registration for those classes. So what's the objective for today? Really, I'd like you to come away with an idea of what air purification devices that you might find out on the market, what are they capable of, and how do they do it? So any device you walk up to on a shelf sitting somewhere or you see it online, I'd like to have at least a working knowledge, for you to have a working knowledge of what this is capable of doing. So if you take and remember back to what we learned in indoor air quality basics, just a little refresher here, there's three contaminants that we need to address in the air that we breathe, okay? And you can think of them in terms of equal thirds. There's the germs, those are the living organisms or microbes, if you will. Those are the things that get us sick. Secondly, there's gases, and under gases comes odors, or VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Just think of new car smell or new carpet smell. Those are actually VOCs coming off a particular product that you can smell. Some of them, the dangerous ones, you can't even smell. Some are formaldehydes, but they're still toxins to our bodies. And lastly, if you remember, people with allergies are really bothered by particulates. These are the small particles suspended in the air because they're so light in weight, we normally can't see them. These are the particulates that are like dust, dander, dead skin cells, or pollen in the air. All right, so once you understand this, then you'll have a way to figure out what the device that you're looking at is, the air purification device, is capable of treating. So does it treat one of those? Does it treat two of those, or all three? And then secondly, we're going to classify these devices. Do they work passively, like a bug zapper in your yard? Remember the bug zapper analogy. Something that's passive, like an air filter, waits for the germs to come to it. It's not proactively doing anything, you're waiting for the contaminants to come to it. Versus an active device would proactively go out into the space and neutralize germs, odors, and take particulates out of the air on an active basis. So that's the question. So if you remember those two things, what is the device capable of treating, and then how are we going to treat? How does that device treat the air? So just a summary here of what we're looking at today is going to be, we're going to talk air filtration, activated carbon, UV or ultraviolet light, ionization, ozone generators, photocatalytic oxidation or PCO. In the traditional sense, those devices were passive and they used titanium dioxide in their catalysts, okay? A little different than the next topic, which is going to be photoionic oxidation or active PCO. There's a big difference between the two. So filtration, there's two factors involved with air filters to be effective. You know, how likely is it that those particles are going to come down the ductwork and come in contact with the media? Is it going to capture the particle and remain captured, or will it re-enter the airstreams? You know, if filters are left long enough in the airstream, those particulates will actually work their way through the media and come back out the other side. And then there's, of course, the old debate, you know, the higher the effectiveness of the air filter, you know, you have to be concerned about restrictive airflow. So the more restrictive the airflow, you're going to go backwards in the term, you know, in the sense of comfort of what the system's trying to do in the space as it is. So limitations to air filtration, they can only remove larger particles in the airstream that actually work their way down to the air filter. You don't get any removal of VOCs or small particles. You're not able to kill pathogens in the occupied space. It is a passive technology. Again, it's sitting there in the ductwork waiting for the germs and odors to come to it, and often have higher static pressure ratings that exceed the system capabilities, even when they're clean. So Merv ratings, you'll see the higher the number as far as Merv rating goes will indicate what it's actually able to filter out. And there's 3 different particle sizes in this particular table. You know, a good way to go about this, you know, any upgrade from a 1-inch air filter is going to be great. I would say anybody with allergies though should at least look at targeting as an entry level like a Merv 11 media air cleaner. Then you start getting most of the, you know, those percentages over on the right of the particles that we're looking at in microns. Then of course, the higher you go, some people that are hypersensitive or have really bad allergies might want to think about a HEPA air filter. And the way we can explain this to homeowners or somebody outside the industry was, you know, it's a hospital grade air filter. So it's 99.97% effective at removing particles at 0.3 micrometers or greater. So it very effective. They're so high in air restrictive in airflow though, those devices usually come with their own fan motors and usually you run them constantly. So what is a micrometer in terms of what it is we're trying to filter out? So, you know, a little speck of beach sand is 90 micrometers in diameter. A human hair is typically 50 to 70 micrometers. The really nasty stuff that we seriously cannot see but have, you know, pollution outside is a big deal. And when you come into sub-micron particles like 2.5, you know, these are the things that are bad and get into your bloodstream. Remember, your lungs are like your own personal filters, and whatever's out there that you breathe in can end up in your bloodstream. If it's a toxin, that's really, you know, nasty stuff. Activated carbon. So carbon can come from a number of places. Usually it's coconut shells, wood or coal. They basically think of carbon as a sponge. Okay, they have millions of pores and atoms that can help trap, you know, chemical fumes, gases, odors, and rendering them harmless. But think of them as a sponge trying to collect whatever happens to come in its path, okay? Due to the high surface area of carbon granules, carbon filters are excellent at trapping gases that would otherwise go right through. You'll see some air filters on the market that actually might have carbon impregnated into the filter media. That's to help with odors, basically. So activated carbon, some of its strengths, it's highly absorbent, effective in trapping chemical fumes, gases, cigarette smoke, and odors. It doesn't release the contaminants back into the air like some filters could if left long enough. These do not generate ozone or any harmful byproducts. So again, this is a passive way of capturing these contaminants in the airstream with the activated carbon. And again, think of a sponge. So there's a life expectancy to it. Let's talk about that and some of the disadvantages to carbon. So it can't do everything. It can't effectively remove dust and other allergens. It doesn't effectively capture bacteria and viruses. And like filters, they are passive, as I just mentioned. You know, as the pores in the filter become more trapped with contaminant, the filter loses its effectiveness and will need to be replaced. So there's a life expectancy to carbon, whether it's in a filter or some other device. It will eventually have to be changed because it becomes loaded up. Let's talk about UV or germicidal UV. You know, our trade has a long history with ultraviolet, and ultraviolet technology has been around a really long time, and it does have its place. But normally it's for germicidal, you know, killing germs on surfaces, and we traditionally have used them to shine on coils or evaporator coils to keep, you know, things from growing on the coils. You know, along the way, a few years ago too, there were several companies out there, and I was guilty of it too. We used to put these lights in the return airdrop of split air systems, and we're thinking that it was a form of an, you know, an air purifier. You know, UV needs 2 things for it to be effective. You need exposure time to the lamp, and you need to be pretty much right on top of the lamp in order for a microbe or a germ to get, you know, zapped or killed. So those 2 things are required. And for years, we used to put those in the return airdrops and call them, you know, air purifiers. So just be careful of some boxes and labeling that you see out on the market. You know, they'll have a UV lamp and they'll say it's an air purifier, when technically it really isn't doing anything, you know, actively for the air that we breathe. However, it can, you know, it'll help you keep coils clean and the HVAC system from becoming a source of a problem. Let's talk a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum when we're talking about UV lights. So basically there's a range of frequency of radiation, and there's a little table of the chart that we're looking at. The ultraviolet light is part of that spectrum and has wavelengths that measure from 400 nanometers to 100 nanometers. You know, what is a nanometer? A nanometer is a unit of measure commonly used in nanotechnology. It's literally 1/1000th of a meter. For our purposes, the unit of measure used to measure the wavelength of UV light. So there's three wavelengths that we're going to be concerned about for our purposes in talking about indoor air quality. There's UVC, UVB, and UVA. Traditionally, UVA is what was used on those air purifiers that sat in the return air systems passively, again, passively waiting for the germ or particle to come towards it. Think of UVB, a sunburn. UVC is more important, I think, to us and what we're going to talk about here. There's two different wavelengths that are commonly used to purify things or create a purification method. 185, just remember the lower the number, the more powerful and stronger it's going to be. So 185 is the strongest that we'll see in our applications, and it's used for oxidation devices, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then 254 is used for germicidal devices, for shining on surfaces to kill germs. Typical placement for UV in our HVAC systems, there's under coil methods. So under a typical A coil there, you'd see, the light would come from underneath, if you will. So the airflow in this case would be going from the bottom to the top, up towards the top duct. And the UV lamp would shine underneath those coil surfaces where they're wet and dark and keep microbes, hopefully, from growing on them. Again, though, remember, you need to be in direct contact with the light. The closer you are to the light, the better off you are as far as cleaning anything. And then there are some other devices out there that sit above the A coil and shine down onto it with these parabolic reflectors, if you will, that shine the light down and direct it down to the coil and shine from above. We're going to move on to bipolar ionization. Again, this technology has been around for a long time. Think of it in terms of a wire or a needle point, a brush used to charge air molecules around it. They create negative and sometimes positive ions. The charged ions attract particles. This is called agglomeration. And when those particles in the air start sticking together, they get heavier and they have to come out of the air. So they fall out of the air. Depending on the size and weight of the larger particles, they may end up on the surface of a space that's being treated. So dust, you're going to have a dusty surface somewhere. And they flow. Some of them will actually flow down towards the air filter, if you will, and hopefully get caught up in the air filter. So bipolar ionization in and of itself can do some good for particulates and some germs, some of them, and really you want to use this particular technology in conjunction with a decent air filter. I would say at least, again, a Merv 11. So I wouldn't use it all by itself. So if you ever see brushes or needles on a device, that's usually bipolar ionization. They look like the old paint brushes we used to see when we were kids painting. Those little paint brushes that came in different colors, right? So strengths of bipolar ionization, they're great at removing particles from the air as small as 0.01 microns. They're effective at neutralizing chemical fumes, cigarette smoke, viruses, and bacteria, and they proactively go out and treat the entire space. So it is a proactive method of cleaning the space that we're trying to treat. Weaknesses, they're useless in treating odors. So if you have stinky odors in any particular application, I wouldn't go bipolar ionization. It's not going to do anything for odors. It won't kill all viruses. And if you think about what we just said, it's going to make those particles precipitate out of the air. There's no means to collect that. So you have to use it in conjunction with filtration. Some ionizers, you have to be careful because the level of electricity that they use, they can actually create a small amount of ozone. And ozone we don't want in our breathing air because it's an irritant to us as humans. We don't want to go there. Which next up, we talk about ozone generators. Yes, there's devices out on the market that are ozone generators. That's O3. They're highly reactive. Ozone is really good at killing germs, okay? But again, from our standpoint, it's an irritant to a lot of people. So it's really good at destroying certain bacteria and chemicals. It's great against odors. Typically, the use of these devices is not always needed or wanted under normal circumstances, and a lot of people that started using them actually turned them off. And there used to be, electronic air cleaners in years past that were made that had ozone generated coming out of them, and I can tell you a lot of those were turned off or replaced with basically immediate air cleaners. You'll find that car dealerships and car rental companies use these. Actually, some hotels do too. If somebody has a party in a room, they'll bring an ozone unit in a room, close the door, and let that thing rip for a little while. Same thing with cars. If somebody smoked in a car, there's ozone generators or devices out there that you can turn on basically, and it'll knock down the odors. So again, they're effective against odors and removal of certain chemicals and bacteria. Weaknesses, ozone is an allergen in and of itself and can cause irritation to us. The smell of ozone could be off-putting to some people. It does not do anything for particulates. So if you have allergies, it's really not going to help you, and it doesn't neutralize most chemicals. So let's talk about traditional photocatalytic oxidation. So if you think of photo means light, and then there's a catalyst, right? So this would be a light shining on a catalyst. Usually these are UVA lights, really low strength lights that shine on a titanium dioxide field. Now what that does, I'm not going to go through reading this whole paragraph to you, but really what I'm going to explain to you is that light shines on that catalyst and it creates a killing field, okay? Whatever I want you to remember about this, normally these were placed in the return airdrops. They're a passive device. Again, you're trying to get, like a bug zapper, you're trying to get all the germs and odors to it in order to treat anything. So it passively does that in a return airdrop somewhere usually, okay? So PCO, there's a whole bunch of them out there. I think I have a couple pictures here to show you. So yeah, when you see something like this where there's a light shining on a catalyst, usually looks like a honeycomb or they look different, they look like a mesh type thing. That's the killing field in which you're trying to trap the germs and the odors onto it. So if you think about that device on the left in a return airdrop, a lot of air is going to go around that. So you're getting a lot of bypass. So whatever comes in contact with that killing field is going to be, not as great of an area as you would want in the entire ductwork. Again, it's done passively, and these are like bug zappers. And here again, they're only decent on, do a halfway decent job on germs and gases. But again, if it was my house, I probably would not tend to go here because I have allergies. I would want something that does particulates. These do not do anything for particulates. Let's talk about the next level of or oxidation. This is photo-ionic oxidation. And this is, the way I explain this is to a lot of folks, the analogy is, Mother Nature has a UV source, the sun, shining on the metals and the water in the Earth's atmosphere, and she creates fresh air. You might recall the saying, I smell the rain coming. So this is done through a natural process. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to recreate what she does outside in a different way. We're going to have a man-made UV lamp that shines on a catalyst, and there's the catalyst, the honeycomb picture on the left and the right, and we're going to create a chemical reaction. So first of all, this UV light is not like traditional UV lights. It's not meant to cook or kill anything. It's actually meant to create a chemical reaction, okay? So it's shining on this catalyst. And what we're actually going to create is hydroperoxides. So you take an H2O molecule and add an extra O to it, you have H2O2. H2O2 is a great oxidizer of germs. It's really, really effective in killing germs. In fact, some of you might, it's the same hydroperoxide as you remember in the brown bottles in liquid form that you would put on a scrape or a wound or a cut to help clean it up. This would just be the aerosolized version of it, and it's a naturally occurring process. So when H2O2 comes in contact with a germ or an odor, it blasts the DNA of the germ or the odor apart and goes back to H2O plus the O. It just splits again, okay? And H2O2 is used in many consumer products like cleaners, teeth whiteners, and contact lens solutions. So it's prevalent on the market as it is today as a cleaning agent. It does a way better job and is not an irritant like ozone would be. So H2O2 is the way to go. Dual technology devices. So here we're talking about a device that'll take two independent cleaning technologies, if you will, put them into one device to treat all three levels of contaminants. So you're going to address the germs, the gases and odors, and the particulates. So we're going to use ionization to handle the particulates, and we're going to use photo-ionic oxidation to take care of the germs and the gases. So all three, and again, you're still going to want to use this in conjunction with, because you're taking particles out of the air, you're going to want to use it in conjunction with a nice like Merv 11 media air cleaner. Okay, and again, this will do it proactively through the space. And this is really important because it's not just taking care of the contaminants in the air, we're actually constantly scrubbing surfaces with those hydroperoxides. So if you have chicken on a counter or you have a cold and you touch a doorknob, you're going to constantly scrub those surfaces. So the common cold virus can actually live on an inanimate surface for about 7 days. So if you have a cold, how we give colds to one another is through contact. So if you think about everything we touch, doorknobs, light switches, keyboards, remote controls, those will constantly get scrubbed with these hydroperoxides on an active basis, proactive basis. Are they ozone free? They are not, but here's how we can handle this. Again, we don't want ozone typically because it's an irritant to us. So there's a trace amount of ozone. The actual source of the ozone is the UV lamp, okay? It's not the actual ionization brushes. In the case of this particular product on the screen, it's not, because the ionization and those brushes there do not create ozone. That trace amount of ozone is actually going to be neutralized by the air scrubbers or the hydroperoxides that are being produced, okay? So in other words, you take this device, you put it in a room, you measure the ambient ozone levels, they don't go up, okay? We're actually neutralizing the ozone that is coming off the lamp. So what you can say about this particular device made by Dust Free is it's ozone neutral, okay? So in summary, when you're trying to look at different devices out there, you want to think in terms of which contaminants is it going to treat? And secondly, how is it going to do it? Is it passively doing it like a bug zapper, or is it proactively treating those contaminants? What are the next steps here? This is being recorded. You all are going to get a copy of this by virtue of registering being here. And then I would suggest, if you hadn't seen the IAQ basic training yet, it is recorded and we actually have it on our YouTube channel, or you can email me for a link. And then the next step would be taking everything that you learned from the first 2 sessions and follow along, and let's figure out a way to talk about this and sell it through conversation, okay? And that's what selling IAQ is going to be about if you have a chance to watch that. There's my contact info. I'm available to you guys at any time, help you out. If you need help in identifying something or what it is, what it's capable of, I can certainly help you with that. And what I would say at this point is, if you have any questions, this would be a great time to ask them. So go ahead and use that chat box down below if you do have a question, and I'll be happy to answer it for you. If you don't have any questions and you need to head out, that's great. Again, I thank you for being with me this morning. Hopefully you got something out of this, and I look forward to talking to you soon.